Well, good morning. We have a great one here for you this morning. We're going to talk all about resume. Check out my self-recruiter website. It will give you a lot of hints on job search, resume, LinkedIn, interviewing, all sorts of things that will help you in your whole job search process. Let me just help that a little bit. On to the next one. There we go. Perfect. So this week I'm presenting 3 different lectures, all that will help you lift your career brand. Whether you're currently in job search or you're just spending time at your company looking maybe for the greener horizons, now's the time to be working on that career brand, that story. Today, as you see, we'll start with resume renovation. Tomorrow, it'll be all about building your career brand with LinkedIn. And then on Thursday, all the secrets to teach them how to select you in interview intervention. Each of those will help you quite a bit in the different areas. I know a lot of times with resume, we think, oh, it's just the resume, just the resume. Well, resume is very, very important, but also your LinkedIn is incredibly important. To me, it needs to be the polar opposite of your resume, becoming this 3-dimensional sales brochure all about you. That'll be tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And then, of course, on Thursday will be my interview intervention lecture, which will also cover video interviewing techniques because we have to up our game. We have to be ready for camera when that time comes. So hopefully you tune into that. All of those events are posted. Now, whether you're watching on LinkedIn or over on my YouTube channel or over on Facebook, I hope you do hit like and subscribe and comment and all those fun things that we can do. Those things really do help. So if you find this valuable, please help me out and do those things as well. Now, as we jump into today's resume renovation, we have a lot to discuss. There's a lot of issues that make resumes not effective. How do we change that? How do we go through a paradigm shift? Well, solving resume issues involves 2 components. We have to work on the story itself. And yes, the story has to improve from where we've told it in the past. Let me just grab a tissue, sorry for that. But also that means once we fix the story and elevate the story to a level that is absorbable, think about that word, to our reader, because they don't really read any longer, we also have to worry about that format that will make it easier for it to flow into their brain and have the narrative stack up in their head within seconds. So we're going to do a lot of focus on both of these. Now, we have to show we're also effective these days remotely, whether we're working in a remote employment situation or a hybrid situation or 5 days a week in the office and may have to do some remote activities. It becomes very, very important to show that you can be effective at a distance. So if you haven't worked remotely, you're going to have to maybe retell your story just a little bit to showcase how you might have interacted with others, as you see here up on screen, or done all sorts of things that still prove that you can be effective at a distance, because that is a huge component of successful employment these days. That's an added thing that everybody's looking for. So you need to make sure, whether it was the items up above or doing conference calls or webinars or even speaking at conferences, all of those things show that you can be effective at a distance. Now, I talked about a paradigm shift. We're going to have to go through a paradigm shift in terms of resume. We have this old idea of what a resume is, this snooze fest of a telling. They don't want to read. I used to stand in the library all the time, New York Public Library, giving the lectures, having to tell the audience that no one will read. And that's the end of that sentence, in the library, having to say that. Now, that portends some awful things for our future. But if we understand no one will read, then why would you put a sentence on a resume? Let's be clear. There's not a single sentence on a resume that I create. I don't think it's a surprise. I work with clients helping them lift their brand across resume and LinkedIn. But why would I put a sentence on a resume in a world where people don't read? So we have to transform our story into absorbable content that can be glanced at in the brain, glanced at in the brain. Really that simple. That's really part of the magic that we have to accomplish. And that means we're going to have to break down the walls, start a full renovation, do something different than we've done in the past. If you haven't seen me before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker, resume and LinkedIn guru as well. So if you're suffering, as most are, with very poor storytelling, a very unshiny brand across your resume and LinkedIn profile, I think you know where to find me. Just check out my self-recruiter website under the services tab. All the packages are there. course, if you need to speak before you know which one's right for you, reach out by email. We'll set up a time to talk. Now, my book is a great resource as well. Check out Amazon for that. It is the easiest method. I'm a big believer in this subtitle you see here, Changing the Rules. That rule works for me. Oh, I love that rule. Love that rule. That rule doesn't work for me. Well, that's meant for somebody else, the other people. I'm just going to step over that fence or whatever's blocking me and go a different route and solve those systemic problems that we really don't have to play with any longer. Let's get off that merry-go-round. A lot of things in the book that will help you. I'll just leave that for you to take a look at yourself. A couple other resources before we jump in today. If you check out my LinkedIn profile and click on my posts and find the articles, you'll find a number of articles that will help you move past many of the problems that may be holding you back. So check those out, like, comment, share them, all the fun things that you can do with those. Now, there's a very special version of my LinkedIn lecture right on my Self-Recruiter homepage, about halfway down the page. It's all free. And you can see both me large or the slides large. And really, you can use it as a start and stop tutorial to improve your LinkedIn profile. That's a great one to use if you're going to use it that way. So think about that. Now, what is this lecture series all about, and what is today's about in terms of resume? It's becoming a self-recruiter. This one great recruiter that looks after just one great candidate. That's part of the magic again. This person that's in your corner who's also you. But that means you also have to be the strategist. You have to roadmap everything in your head. You have to think about the obstacles and how to overcome those. And when we get beaten down, we have to be the ones to pick ourselves up with the bootstrap and dust ourselves off and get ourselves ready to move forward again. That's about taking control and being in control. All those negative feelings that we tend to have tend to come out of lack of control. So the more control you have, both in your story, in your job search process, in all of your outreach communications, your ability to look at the camera and not the screen, all of those things will help you improve your game and presentation. And I hate to say, perception in today's world is reality. So no longer good enough just to be great at what you do. You have to also be perceived as that level that you are. Means also we have to keep one eye on the toughest competitor imaginable. Those 4, 5, 6 people that would scare you out of applying for the job. Oh, they're applying for it. They're applying for it. Oh, forget it. Really? Those people, those perfect people, are really so easy to beat. They suffer from something called ego and arrogance, and they don't prepare. They get up in the morning, they dust themselves off, they get dressed, whatever. You know what? We all have to do that. That is not preparation. A little bit of planning and strategy and just good sense, changing the rules when they don't work for you. Suddenly we can compete against them and be much more effective, and we can beat them almost every time. Now, we'd love to just see the job, go after the job, get the job if it were really only that easy. But what's happening is everyone's sitting back doing the same thing you're doing. They're hitting that darn button, and rarely does it really say apply. It almost always says submit, all capital letters, till we're so submissive. It's like a Friday night, waiting for that phone to ring. It's going to ring. It'll be a telemarketer when it does. It's just the way it, or a scammer these days. So be careful. This is a rut that we're stuck in. This groove, this track, this path that we keep going over and over. We've got to break that cycle. You know, one of the cycles I like to break very, very quickly in job search is when I see a job that I like, is must apply online, must send a Word document. So, really? My clients call me up and they go, "Oh, John, I have this job I'd like to go after." I'm like, great, don't apply for it. What? Don't apply for it. Don't apply for it? Well, then when you apply for a job, where does that resume go? In almost every case, not every case, but almost every case, where does that job, your resume go? It goes to someone in HR. Now, if you're looking to work in HR, absolutely, it may be going to your decision maker. But if you're not looking to work within HR, in my view, it's going to someone whose mission in life is to rule you out. And they're following that mission without the full background to really understand your specialty. Just a few little check boxes on a list like, oh, we're looking for this. You know how that job description was written? By the way, I call it the list of the irrelevance. That's a new word with a T and an S, because almost everything on that list is irrelevant. Oh, tangentially somehow connected. I get it. But that's not a picture of the day-to-day of this job. And yet by the time it is taking like a lunch order. What do you think we should hire? A little salt, a little sugar, a little spice, until it gets down to HR and it's like, but you don't match the magical checkbox list. I'm like, I think I should get bonus points for that. 90-second conversation with the decision maker, that really changes everything. That's the magical part of it. That person understands why you're exactly right for the role or not. So you can't talk yourself into a role you're not right for, but we need to break out of this rut that we're stuck in, which leaves us in very unhappy places. So I used to ask my in-person crowds, like, how are you feeling about your resume? Or how's your LinkedIn profile? Or how was your last interview, depending on whatever the lecture is. And they'd all yell out these things. And then I'd put them up on screen, okay, and I'd look at them. Like, wow, not very uplifting. I actually used to have some people mention that. Oh, that part wasn't very uplifting. Like, not uplifting, but it is reality, and we have to start with reality to fix things. So whatever is holding us back, we have to learn to put it up on the shelf, move it out of our way, and see what's just over the horizon. We have to get over it. And if we've gotten laid off, we're some emotionally damaged goods. It just happens. It's like the stages of grief, and you have to work yourself through it. But if time is of the essence, sometimes we have to just compartmentalize really strongly and put that in a little box, put it up on the shelf. We can revisit those things anytime we'd like, but not today, because we have to move forward. So I want you to think in terms of unusual and unexpected and unconventional, not the usual customary expected. No, that's what everybody does. This resume doesn't look like all the rest. It doesn't, which is why it's much, much more effective. Actually, what I'm teaching you today about resume, you may quickly realize, wow, this is an unconventional style, John. It is. Developed exactly as a recruiter on a desk, a headhunter, going out and finding superstars and getting the superstars rejected because, I don't see this. Well, in fact, they have that when I talk to them about, I don't see it. Let's keep looking. Looking for another unicorn. You know how many unicorns there are? Very few. and the problem is really a storytelling problem. And so since I had a full pre-press background in a prior work life, I really did understand and do understand line type and spacing and all that. I'm like, oh, I can see the solution to the problem here. Find the unicorns, help them fix their story so it represents really who they are, and get an interview one after another, lots and lots of placements. It's your job on the resume and in person or over the phone, over Zoom, whatever it might be, to be persuasive. And that means we have to allow ourselves, well, let's talk about the fact that I grew up Catholic first off. So modesty and humility, wonderful, wonderful traits for all the rest of our life, but not in job search, not in career. In those two areas, it works directly against us. So you have to allow yourself to drink just enough of the Kool-Aid to get out there and be better than the next 5 or 6 individuals that may be great talkers and then really don't bring the solutions you bring. In fact, you owe it to these companies to be your best so they don't hire the wrong individuals. It's a digital world, isn't it? Let me get a little coffee. It's a coffee world. Well, why does a resume still matter? I mean, does it even still matter? I'm not really sure. I mean, there's so much on it. There's so much to read. I just get tired of these things. A resume still matters because it tends, in most cases, to be the first point of contact all about you and your background. Not always. Sometimes it's LinkedIn, but still, many times it's the resume. So it's the first step of you taking control of the discussion about who you are, why you're better than the rest, why you're the right hire that will solve their problems. And that means we have to really understand also the challenges the resume has to overcome. So let's take a look behind the curtain. When I am after something, when I am maybe even doing what John says not to do and clicking and sending and applying for things, what's happening? So by the numbers, what's going on behind the scenes? Well, if this is any kind of a decent job, that means there's 1,000 to 2,000 resumes being sent in at a minimum. Now, don't mishear what I said. I did not say 1,000 to 2,000 qualified candidates. I said 1,000 to 2,000 resumes being sent in. What happens is they see a great job and they go, oh, that's a great job. They must have a job for me right around that one. And all the things that surround that job also send their resume into that one, hoping to get plucked out of the onslaught of resumes, the fire hose of resumes, essentially. for other jobs. And it turns into this endless resume storm, almost like a snow blindness storm of like, what are all these? I can't even tell these people apart any longer. So you begin to think about the problem, but you really only have a little bit of an idea, the tip of the iceberg of the problem. Who can read 1,000 emails, 1,000 resumes, 1,000 cover letters, and do all the rest of the work that they're supposed to do? I don't know anybody that can do it. But that's not still the real problem. That's the tip of the iceberg. If you're sending into a recruiter, whether that's an internal or external recruiter, HR person, doesn't really matter, somebody in the recruiting function, they typically work on 10 open positions or 10 open jobs at the same time. So the question really is, who can read 10,000 emails, 10,000 resumes, or 10,000 cover letters? And I guarantee you, nobody can read those things and do any of their own work. It's not even possible. Oh, the applicant tracking system is going to help me. It's like a little animal with a tag on its ear. Yeah. Well, if you think that's going to help you, you might as well stop at the bodega and buy a lottery ticket to do your financial planning for the future. I do buy a lottery ticket on occasion, especially when it gets really big, just to have some fun. I don't plan my financial future that way because I don't ever expect to win, just like I don't ever expect to get a job through this merry-go-round. I need to change the equation of diminishing returns and try something different, which I teach you a lot about in tomorrow's lecture about LinkedIn and how to use it for your job search. But in terms of resume, what we have is mere seconds. We have 3 to 5 seconds. That is the literal amount of time, 3 to 5 seconds before they make some value judgment about you. Now, typically what they're looking at is your name, which is your brand, employer title, education, kind of a reverse half moon. And based on their view of those companies that you work for, the titles that you have had without really reading anything detail, and the education, they come to some value conclusion about how valuable is this person. Oh my gosh, I hope they have the same background as you, or how could they possibly have a similar view of your value? So that doesn't really work in most resume formats. What we have to do is somehow communicate both sides of what you're seeing here. Most people think about the problem. They go, I know what I'll do. I'll just be cookie cutter perfect. I'll be cookie cutter perfect. That's fine. You're cookie cutter perfect. I'll take number two. I'm going to take you. Yeah, I'm going to take you. I'm going to pay you less. Oh, you don't want less? Okay, it doesn't matter. I'll take number 3, number 5. Cookie cutter perfect gets you less salary, gets you less responsibility, less compensation, because you're all interchangeable. You have to somehow accomplish being cookie cutter perfect, interchangeable, and also be different, exceptional, and learn how to step out of line at the same time with your story. Be different, be interesting. We like to hire people that are interesting. You know why? Because, I'd like you to be qualified. Please be qualified. But once I get down to the qualified people, I'd like you to be interesting because I have to spend my waking life with you. If I hire you, I'm probably spending more time with you than my loved ones. That's why we want to like people or get them or know how they tick. So let's not forget the rest of our story too. We'll talk about that. Don't want to set the expectation that you're going to spend a couple hours and have your brand new resume. You may spend a few hours, let's say even more than a couple, and you may have your first iteration of your new resume. But very likely you're going to have to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, who knows how many to get to the right version, the very best version that opens doors, makes people get out of their chair. You know what the reaction to the right resume is? They're looking at this stack of resumes, they're droning out, then they get to yours, they go, oh, get them in here, get them on the phone. I have to speak with them. And that's the magic. They haven't even read it, but there's something there they realize is different, special, interesting, unlike the rest, but qualified. I have to speak with that person. That's the right version of your resume. By the way, that's very difficult for most individuals to do for themselves because they're so emotionally close to their own story and they're so used to telling it the way they've always told it. It's very hard for individuals to tell it in a new way. So if you need to work with someone, gosh, I know someone who can help you quite a bit. Small changes change perception, and that's what we need to do. Now, I mentioned earlier growing up Catholic. That means I know everything about negotiating sin, and there's no sin of omission here. There's only sin of commission here. I can leave any part of my story out, all the dull, dry stuff I never want to do again. I can leave that out. I don't need that credit. Leave in all the exciting things, the ruby, diamond, emerald, drop of perfume, nugget of gold. Those things should be the story. And another trap that people fall into with the resume is trying to prove something. I have a little something on my glasses here, which is going to drive me crazy all day if I don't fix it. So let me just get a lens wipe and fix this. Sorry about that. And so I have to make sure that it's the very, very best story. Not that everything I ever need credit for is listed. That's really not the right approach. Oh, that's better. Now I can see it a little bit better. So the start of the process in reinventing your resume and lifting your career brand is to work on the story component. And that means most people have to close down for inventory. Now, what I do with my individual clients, and I'd recommend the same process for you if you're going to do it yourself, is you have a deep dive interview. And in this deep dive interview, the first part of it, you've got to accomplish who are your target markets, who are those various folks that you're trying to get attention for. And we have to think about those and put some thought behind it. And then you have to think about your entire story for the rest of the deep dive interview to think about what would appeal to that target market. And that begins to help you understand what's the minutia and what's the nugget of gold, drop of perfume, emerald, diamond, ruby, whatever it might be. So with my clients, I do about a 90-minute deep dive interview, and I come up with, I don't know, about 8 or 9 pages of notes. It's a lot of background in addition to all the material. And, you could almost at that point grab a highlighter and be very stingy, very stingy. Oh, I'm only going to highlight things that are resume worthy. Is it resume worthy? Does it rise to that level? Now, most of the things that you write down are going to be emotionally important to you, and you're going to want to highlight everything. Can't highlight everything, just the ruby, diamond, emerald. And then you have a core idea of what has to make the cut for the resume. The rest is all negotiable. Yes, be capable and qualified, but you know what? I don't hire people because they're capable and qualified. Don't mishear that. Every single person I'm looking at will be capable and qualified, or I wouldn't look at them. Why I hire people is, why are you interesting? What makes you tick? What drives you? So let's not forget the rest of the story. Now, as a recruiter on a desk, as a headhunter, when I was placing sales individuals, people that might sell like $1 million box of software, takes a lot of steel is the nicest way to say it, to walk in and pop the box down and go, $1 million, and here's why it's worth it. But you know who was hiring them? Sales managers, sales directors, sales VPs. And in private conversation, they all had something called the airport test, because they had to fly around to meet customers all the time. They're with their sales reps. And it's like, if I get stuck in the airport with this person for 4 hours, am I going to want to cut my head off? Airport test. That's why we want to like people. So think about this 8 or 9 pages of notes that you might come up with all about you, and you have to not squeeze it all in there, but it's an editing chore. How do I edit just to the nugget of gold, the ruby, diamond, emerald? So think about all those things that I don't have to read because they're right here that will constitute your brand. And think about how you want to be perceived. Those elements have to be showcased somehow. These are all the things that will, of course, separate you from the other candidates. One of the lenses you filter everything through to try to help you is this one singular question I talk about in all of my lectures. And that is, why is it going to be the very best business decision that they make today if they choose to hire you? If you hit that target, if you filter everything through that, you're going to be very, very close to where you need to be. So take a look at this resume. It's like getting hit in the head with a brick. I was giving a talk at the New York Public Library, and right in that case, it was about 90 minutes with Q&A. And right afterward, and I think you already get a sense from watching me today, I have a lot of energy, a lot of passion, a lot of caffeine as well. And I used to take a triple over ice to those events. And someone comes up to me right afterward and they go, I've been told is all I can expect is more of this. And they give me the resume. And I'm like, what is it? What is it? And I look at this resume and I start to fall asleep, even after all the caffeine and energy and adrenaline. And I better ask a question. I'm like, what would you like to do? I'd like to work in events. I'm like, oh, nice energy. Have you ever worked in events? Ouch. I'm me. If you look really closely, you see events coordinator. It's right there. I am me with my background, and I can't see it. How do you think anybody else can see it? You know what this person's being told you can expect more of this because they see law firm. Now there's law firm and there's law firm. Very impressive law firm. Ooh. And before that, another impressive law firm. Ooh. More law firm for you. You're a law firm person. That's all they could get from this resume. Doesn't really work. Even if you zoom in, yeah, I see the events coordinator all drowned out by a wall of text and law firm. And I think more law firm for you. This is the same resume. This is the same background. Have ever worked in events? Have you ever worked in events? Yes. In fact, I've done events at the Heller Gallery, at the Guggenheim, at the New York Public Library, at the Met, Morgan Library and Museum. It's like, oh, why don't you tell that story? You'd be hired tomorrow. Well, and I didn't just do that. I did all sorts of event-related things. I was the speaker wrangler. I'm like, who are these speakers? Tom Brokaw, Ted Koppel. I think there was somebody else here too that we took. Oh, Charlie Rose. Occasionally, some of those names have to come off. You have to think about removing the sentence structure, removing the story that isn't needed, and only telling the story that is needed. Now, this individual, I think about half of their job was administrative nonsense they never wanted to do again. So why are we talking about that? Talk about the fact that you've done A+++ venues with amazing things and handled all the RSVPs and handled the speakers and dazzling speakers, and you'd be hired tomorrow. Of course, this person is working back in events. So, and I'd still say the law firm's still very impressive. We didn't lose any of that. So they realized that, wow, expensive law firm has a lot of funding for events. That means you've worked on great events. You bring the experience. Just by hiring you, it would elevate our events. This transformation in storytelling. You're going to have to think about how you transform your story into something much, much more dazzling. We're a product, whether we like it or not. That's a reality. We're a product. And it reminds me of when I first started doing what I'm doing. And I had run as far as I could run being a recruiter. I guess I should fill you in on a little bit of my background. 3 different disciplines on a desk as a headhunter, traditional recruiter. 2 of them I did national market, which simply means I never met anybody, never met a manager, never met a candidate, every single thing over the phone, lots of placements. Oh yes, it can all happen in conversation because that's where it does happen. And then I did local market Manhattan. And then I became one of the national trainers. We had a 100 office recruiting system. And so national trainer, and then head of the national training program, and then VP over the whole thing before moving out to do what I do now, which is, of course, work with individuals. But as I moved out, suddenly I'm going, well, now what? I'm so done with recruiting because we do something for a long time and then we get tired of it. It's like, it's the same old thing. I need to do something new. Now what? I'm like, oh, well, I have a lot of knowledge. I could write my book, and I wrote my book, of course. And I was over at a friend's house who was much older than me at the time, still much older than me. and her father had written a book and it became a New York Times bestseller. And so, of course, I wanted some reaction, some advice. And she goes, you're the product. I already had this in the book and it didn't resonate with me. She's like, you're the product. Well, in reality, John is shy and introverted, which usually makes my friends spit out their coffee, or their drink or whatever they're having because they've never seen it. I'm like, just because I'm very good at hiding it with technique does not mean just under the surface that I'm not shy and introverted. I've learned to get past it because I have desires and goals, and I refuse things to stop me from getting to my destiny. But the moment she said this, you're the product, John, I'm like, oh, I was nauseous. I'm like, oh, I was hoping the book would be the product. No, you have to step on center stage. You're the product. And in our careers, we have to understand that we're the product. It's not just, look what I've done, hire me. Step into the light, step into the spotlight, learn to love the light around you. 3 big light boxes all around me, which is why I'm lit up. Understanding the product end of it is how you create engagement, which is, of course, a whole lot closer to this type of engagement than the other. They have to want to work with you. Small changes in how you tell the story change everything. All of this is part of your personal branding, back to all those things that separate us out from others, kind of the ability to kick your competitor to the curb. What I want to show you here is just 3 resumes, first off, that I plucked off the internet. And I want to poke some holes in them. You've seen resumes like these, so you'll understand once I start throwing some shade at these. It's almost easier to absorb what I teach you once I do this. Let me just make those a little larger. There we go. I can come right there. So I'm still here. So here, this first one, Kelly. Well, kudos to Kelly on his or her brand. Yeah, I pulled off the last name. Figured you didn't really need that part of it. But kudos to Kelly on his or her name. Your name is your brand. Nice, big, bold, whatever. Kudos. Now, I'm not really quite sure that yellow was the right choice. On screen, it's hard to look at visually. On paper, it prints out as shades of gray. So I don't think that was really the right choice. And that's the last positive thing I have to say about this resume. This resume suffers from what most resumes suffer from, and that's a complete failure to consider information architecture. Look at any substantial building around you. No matter how simple that building is, it required an architect for everything to work, someone to decide on everything. Same thing for your resume. What if they only read 30% of your resume? No, 20%, no, 15% of your resume is all they're going to read. Which 30, 20, or 15% do you want them to read? That is your choice by how you design the resume. Where will they absorb story, and what else will they let drop to the wayside if they're not interested? Here, I start down the one column, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to go across or down, then across again. And I have mere seconds. That is a failure in this resume that really doesn't work. So that one has to go to the side. Julia here. Julia. I love that little commentary on the bottom of the resume. By the way, I did not write that. It says, who said the name had to go at the top anyway? I'll say it. I'm a big believer in changing the rules. You need to change any rule that doesn't work for you. This is not a rule you can change. Every other resume in that pile is right at the top. Name. That's your brand. Fine. Julia gets the look because she's down the page. Now she's created an additional information architecture problem because I don't understand whether I should read below the name first and then go to the top, or how should this work? And she's disrupted without a purpose. And so that creates a problem. Another problem with this resume is what Julia did was she put the only reasons I would not hire her right in the I path. Remember that reverse half moon, employer title, education from the name. What's in my path? The dates. Now, dates are expected on a resume, but dates should be as far away from their eye pattern as possible. Certainly not bold, probably a little bit smaller. Don't look here, and certainly don't write justify. I don't want anything to pull the eyes to the dates, because that's not the story. Dates are only ever a reason I don't hire you. Dates are never the reason I do hire you. So that's not the sell piece. Now, the other thing here that's really wrong is I can't see the employers. Now you might go, well, John, they're blurred out. Well, and yes, I get that. Imagine they're not blurred out. They're over in the middle of the text. I have to go intellectually find them. Your employers determine almost every ounce of value you bring to the table. If you worked for 3 very big name employers, and I know those employers, you have much more value than 3 employers I've never heard of. And so you can't make them go dig for that content. Number of problems here. Lastly, let's just show you Martin's resume here. And gosh, I've seen this resume format so many times. I wish whatever book has this in it would just go out of existence, because it's doing such a disservice to individuals. Kudos to Martin on his brand. I get your brand. I'm not sure if it's a wise decision to use 25% of the entire real estate to tell me your contact information and your name. So poor choice there. We've wasted so much space. And again, an information architecture with the 2 columns. I'm not sure if I should go down and across, or how should this work. And if I just back up and look, all I can actually see is education, internship, and personal skills, which are silly, gimmicky labels drawing the attention, not Martin's story. You begin to see some of the problems here. Gimmicks don't get you hired. Great content and great story about you. You have mere seconds to capture their interest, and let's not waste that time. Let's use all of our personal branding ability to lift ourselves up and be selected. Now, even though it's the resume lecture, of course, I have to talk about LinkedIn, and I swear we're going to get to detail about the resume coming up, font size, everything else coming up. So, but these are both marketing tools. They're both 2 sides of the same coin to position and sell yourself. In my view, the resume is about catching or piquing their interest in you, and LinkedIn is about closing the deal with you as the very, very best one. And that means they have to be very, very different from one another. These are influence documents. One's usually a physical resume or a PDF of your resume. The other is much more of a three-dimensional sales brochure all about you that could drive them to a singular conclusion about hiring you. Let's go back to the brick in the head resume and think about, even if you zoom in here, we don't really get a lot because there's no clarity here. Your personal branding, if it's to be effective, has to be about clarity and influence. That's clarity on everything you bring to the table, career path and story, and influencing them about your value, lifting that piece of it. That's how it becomes special or different, just like this one transformed to really elevate the individual as the story, not the law firm as the story. Of course, the law firm has to be there, and that's back to how you create engagement, which is closer to the second version. Let's jump into the nitty-gritty detail of how you improve your resume. 5 steps to producing a really amazing resume. First, you are a product too. We're going to come back to every one of these. Resume, the new definition, coming right back. Your resume's goals, understanding stacks of resumes, and the 3-second test for resumes. Let's go back to the beginning. You are a product too. When I can come back large. Here we go. Sorry about that. You are a product too. When a company chooses to hire you, they're buying a product, or at least buying your time and talents. We get that part. So what kind of product would you like to be? Let's think about that. Would you like to be that store brand, that the color of the packaging is always a little bit off, the flavor is a little bit off, but I like the price, Would you like to be that store brand? Would you like to be the national brand, where it's like the best taste, the best packaging, and the better price, at least in terms of what the vendor's getting? I bet you'd like a better price too, as far as your compensation. We have to think a lot about our product and how we elevate the product. Resume, the new definition. It's not a summary. It's not a biography. It's not a CV that no one ever wants to see ever again. It's like 5 pages of my eyes bleeding. No one wants to see that. This is something very, very different. I hope you have a lot of ink ready to write this down. I hope you're taking notes, because it's one thing to watch this, and yes, you can watch it again, but to really learn things, you have to begin to embed them in your head, and note-taking during these sessions will help you. So it's a simple sales sheet that creates desire. Now, I'm up on stage a few years back, standing next to Reverend Jesse Jackson at Wall Street Project, pinching myself, going, how did I get here? Well, learn to open doors. Everything is not transactional. If I do this, what do I get? I don't know. But I know if you do the same thing you've been doing, I know what you're going to get. And so I opened doors until I suddenly got invited. I'm up on stage, and it's an event where they had a career session, and they invited 5 career coaches, and I'm the only non-African American on stage, and I'm the only male on stage. And I'm like, how did this happen? And I'm giving my talk talking about a resume that creates desire. We had 12 minutes each to say something. I'm like, oh, so generous, 12 minutes. What can I say in 12 minutes? Quite a bit. So I decided this particular audience needed a more evangelical approach. My father was a Catholic deacon, so I speak many, many times. I'm like, I'm going to turn up the heat here. And I gave really a tour de force 12-minute thing with 40 slides just flying behind me nonstop, not really directly related, but related. And I got the very first question, and I got 30 to 35% of all of the questions. And next speaker gets up and goes, resume that creates desire. Huh, interesting. Well, when I was reinventing myself, I think the book is still in print. I'm like, well, what? You think the book is still in print, and you think you have something valuable to share? Got to manage our brand at all times, no matter who we are. Resume that creates desire. Your resume's goals. Now, its mission in life is to deliver the interview. That's its only job. Now, it's your job in the interview to then win them over and to teach them how to select you. That is Thursday's 10 a.m. lecture. Come back for that one. But its job is to deliver the interview. But it has a mission, some goals that have to help it get to that mission. And what are they? A clear, clean, straightforward format. This is a format where the information itself literally jumps off the page for the reader. All the things that they want to know, not what you want to tell. Oh, I want to tell it this way. Who cares? tell it the way they want to hear it. That's still letter true, has to be letter true. Of course, has to inform by educational background as well. Understanding stacks of resumes. You know what this is? This is if you don't listen to me and you hit that darn button, that submit button. Sometimes it says apply, but most times it says submit to drive you into submissiveness. No phone calls. Really, first one I'd call. You know, as a recruiter, I really loved it. We would look at job ads for leads of what companies we could work with. And it would say, no phone calls, no recruiters. And first one I'd call every single time because I know they don't mean me. They mean all those bad recruiters out there. A little picket fence to keep away the weaklings that don't know how to step over the fence. But they're going to thank their lucky stars once they're speaking to me. And you have to have that same level of understanding about your value. But if you do hit that darn button, what happens? Well, first off, your resume is going off toward a little black hole in space called the data warehouse. Once it reaches the black hole of the data warehouse, kiss that resume goodbye, not likely to ever see it again, statistically. But on the way, it's going to stop in front of a person, and they all stack up. And you're going to get a quick look and what happens with these stacks of resumes. 1,000, 2,000 resumes in a stack. We're going to sort them into one of three stacks. There might be somebody in here, might be somebody in here. That's the good stack. That's the good stack. Maybe I have to come back and take another look. But they don't come back and take another look. They don't come back and take another look because I have this whole incoming new river of resumes. Why would I come back to these folks that couldn't quite convey their value to me the first time when I have all new exciting ones to look at? Stack 2 becomes a dead end. And by the way, a resume longer than a single sheet of paper almost by default goes into stack 2. You must get that resume down to a single sheet of paper, but we're going to talk about that. And the thanks but no thanks stack. I don't even know why you sent this in here. You know, it's not the bodega. You're not getting winning the lottery today off this thing. So the secret you may not like, I really told it to you earlier, and it's 3 to 5 seconds. That's not a trainer exaggeration. I know trainers exaggerate a little bit to get you over the finish line. Let's pull them over the finish line with a little exaggeration. You will not have longer than 5 seconds, and they will stick you in one of those 3 stacks. Now, if you took your resume and you did a 3 to 5 second test of your resume, which stack are you going in? What can you tell yourself about yourself after 5 seconds? I usually go take a look at your resume. And stop. And I gave you the benefit of the doubt. I gave you the full 5 seconds, 1001 to 1005. And most people, when I'm doing in-person lectures, they look up and go, deer in the headlights, I can't tell you anything. You got a problem with your resume. Obviously, you know what your first goal is. You must make it into stack number 1 or they're never actually going to read the resume. However, if you make it into stack 1, you have another problem. They're going to, in today's world, we got 50 great people in stack number 1. I can't look at 50 resumes, 50 cover letters, 50 emails. So there's a secondary sorting process. This secondary sorting process is on LinkedIn. They're going to grab your name, pop it on LinkedIn. Not on LinkedIn. Out comes that resume over to stack 2. You're on LinkedIn. Nobody likes this one. It's exactly what I have on the resume. Out comes that resume over to stack 2. You miss the understanding of the challenge. I'm looking for you to further convince me. That's why our LinkedIn has to transform into this 3-dimensional sales brochure that closes the deal about why we're the best of the best in whatever it is we do. 1-page resume, unless it's 2, but you see, I'm really not happy with 2. There's really no time I'll tell a client it's okay to have a 2-page resume. I don't care what your background is. Now, I was mentioning this at one lecture I was giving over at the New York State Department of Labor, and some guy in back is flipping out going, oh, come on. What if you're a CEO and you got a 30-year career? It's never going to fit. Take a breath. I don't think your reaction is because you don't like John's answer. I think your reaction is because you go, how did I get here? How come no one can see my value? What am I doing here? Not a surprise that guy hires me. And he was the one that had the 5-6 page resume of CV of my eyes bleeding. You never get that to a single sheet of paper. I'm like, boom, there it is. Of course, CEO again. Just, it's an editing problem. Didn't know how to edit, wanted to tell the whole story versus it's just to deliver the interview, dazzle them and save the rest for discussion or for your LinkedIn profile, more expansive telling. 1-page resume. What are we looking at? Name, which is your brand, the last 3 employers and titles, your educational background. Now, here's a listening test. When I would give these talks at the public library all the time, I'd have people go, after the lecture, I'd hear people go, well, John said just put the last 3 employers and titles. He did? When did he say that? I said, what we're looking at is this for time, relevance, and skill. If you asked me a different question, what would you like on the resume, John? Oh, so glad you asked. What I'd like is for the resume to be complete from the time you entered the workforce to today. I didn't say that was the right solution for everybody. Sometimes we have to truncate that background. 3-second test, already ran you through it. We're going to bypass that piece. I object to objectives all of the time. Objective statements, summaries, core competencies, highlights of whatever. It's like, as a recruiter, we used to open the resume, see all that stuff. We'd look at the name, we'd hide our eyes, go down to employer title, education, decision. That's the magic of the recruiter sort. That stuff up there is meant to persuade, and we don't want that. So I like to toss all this out the window and use that space in a different way, something I call the positioning title. Simple iteration could be 4, 5, 6 words. That's exactly the bullseye that they're trying to hire. In a more complex background, it might be 2, 3, 4 lines of 4, 5, 6 things that not only have the exact title they'd like to hire, but also the 4, 5, 6 emotional hot buttons that they might be looking for. So let's go back to this one and zoom in on it and begin to think about not getting hit in the head with the brick here. And you realize how ineffective this is. I start reading it, high energy. I'm really going to sleep right away versus high energy events planner, specialist. There it is. Bingo. Boom. What is this person? That's what they are. Says so right there. And that's how I'm thinking about them before I look at their contributions. Or it could be someone that's doing a campaign director or media and PR or community liaison, a lot of different things. Could be a sales professional that talks about software, hardware, services. I'm about to show you this resume coming up here. But back to this one, it doesn't really work even zoomed in. So you have to sit and go, well, how do I transform that story? How do I make things just right? Now, as far as font selection, let's just get right down to it. I recommend Arial, Verdana, or Helvetica. Certainly not Times or all these things with squiggly and everything else. Those are not easy to read, and you need 3 to 5 seconds. Excuse me, it has to roll right into their brain. On sizing, everything is 10 point or less. 10 point or less? What? I can't read it. It's like we have these things called glasses, and they're not for you. This is for other people. So everything goes down. The bullet points are 8.5 in size with 1.75 points of space in between. The brand line, the employer line is 10 point bold with 2 points of space below it. I'm going to show you how to put the space in there. We have to think about control. The comma, location, and dates are down to 7 point, even though they're on the same line as the brand, because that's not important. Don't look here. It's included, but don't look here. That's not the story. This is like being in a dark room with a flashlight and controlling where the eyes look. Back to what if they're going to read 15% of yours or 20% of yours? What do you want them to read? Careful about cutting your resume. This person originally, law firm, had cut off that they worked at Martha Stewart Living because they didn't want to show back to the 90s. I'm like, you're still going to have to walk through the door. They're going to have to meet you. So let's not just cut away the story here. You worked for Martha Stewart Living. That needs to be, and House Beautiful Magazine, where you did an event at the Guggenheim, and European Travel and Life magazine, where you did event-related things. Yes, you might truncate some stuff, but don't cut off the wrong parts of the story. This was very interesting. Now, this was a number of years ago. They came to me, and they'd been in contract furniture sales, like selling 1,000 desks type thing, for 10, 11 years. Great run. I'm so done selling furniture. Okay, so what's happening for you? It's like their whole resume was this one job of furniture with a couple little footnotes at the bottom of prior stuff. And it was furniture. They were sending out their resume and they go, we don't need a furniture salesperson. Quit talking about furniture. Price Modern, I didn't know them as a brand. If you knew them, that's furniture. Hayworth, of course I knew. There it is right there, Hayworth. Corporate office furnishings, there's the wording. That's the only place it exists. I took the entire background and made it just a super paragraph of deliverables. Every single thing that a sales manager would look for to hire a salesperson. Achieve $50 million cumulative sales to date, ranked top 10 revenues every year since 2002, on and on and on, strong pipeline, everything else. And that allowed me to expand the earlier telling. This person's real challenge was they were trying to get over to software, hardware, and services, which I used to place. I'm a great field, great field. Have you ever done it? Yes, like 15 years ago. Oh, so you're trying to sell 15-year-old experience. I get it. So condense this down, and that allowed us to expand the earlier telling. So with a little bit of the change at the positioning title, they open it up with sales, software, hardware, services, just what I'm looking for. Then they see your dazzling sales deliverables, and just on the page, they see you have worked in software, hardware, services, which is, of course, where they work now. Bottom of a resume, this will help you a lot. Bottom of a resume, I'm a big fan of splitting the bottom of the resume. It's the only way on a single page to make it effective. So you'll notice there's 3 universities here, but only 2 of them are treated the same. You see there's a different hierarchy in size because everything can't be equal. Everything's equal. You didn't tell them where to look. And you know, I know that if this is your field, you're probably jumping out of your chair over that PMP over on the far right. PMP, tattoo it on my forehead. Has to go where it belongs, which is subservient to the degrees, does not trump the degrees. And so everything in its place. And community involvement, does that even belong here? I'd like that character checkbox in addition to dazzling deliverables. But let's look just above this, which is why I'm really showing it to you. This person was, you know, mature in their career, and we decided we were going to cut some story. And so we decided to either start or stop, depending how you think of it, the story on electronic data systems. Now, if you're not familiar with them, they're one of those employers. You know, every field has one of those employers that if they hired you, you must be dazzling. Financial services, you know who that is? It's Goldman Sachs. There's only one of them. And so whatever you think of it, it's Goldman Sachs. So EDS is one of those. It's a great place to start or stop the story. And so I think that if we sit and look at that, oh, I didn't mean to really go back. Can I go backward? Let's see. Hang on one second here. I really hate it when that happens. Let's escape out of that. Let's go back and let's play this for you. And now let me get it out of my view so, so I can see again. There we go. So the electronic data systems piece, that's great, but there were 3 prior employers. Actually, there were more, but 3 prior employers. I want you to look at this. 2 out of those 3 prior employers also rise to that same stunning level. One is Kaiser Permanente, and the other is not John Hopkins, is, if I can get closer, PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC. Both of those organizations have this reputation of being so dazzling. So, gosh, we have 3 stunning little nuggets of gold. Now, just for clarity in how you arrange story, EDS is 10-point bold, but these 3 prior employers, that is 3/4 of 1 inch on the sheet of paper. It does not have to be large to be effective. Think about that very fancy, expensive dessert that comes out at the restaurant and on a big plate. It's tiny little dessert in the middle with the drizzle all over in a couple directions, and there's some sprinkle, and then there's a cherry on top. Everything appropriate. So those 3 employers are probably 8-point bold. The titling for the job is probably 7.5-point italicized. By the way, I like the job title itself, a 0.5 point less than the brand. So the main ones are 9.5 in size, but not bold, because then they'll fight against your brand. They have to work in harmony against your brand. That's why they are italicized, to still draw attention. 4 points of space after the titling, before bullets. And again, between the bullets is 1.75 points of space. And suddenly, right down to the locations are probably even 6 point, very, very small, but it's like dazzle. Now, you notice there's no dates on that, because if I put dates on that, that would add 17 years of extra background. Who needs to be 17 years older the next time we walk through that door? Probably not too many of us. a few of us, not too many of us. So if I take the dates off there, I certainly have to take them off education, because I cannot allow them to do mathematics. That does not work for us. So again, requires 2 things to solve these resume issues, both the work on the story and the work on the format. It's very, very important. The top line of your resume, the contact line under your name. By the way, your name, I recommend 18-point bold, big bold, no time for shyness, John Crant, or whatever your name is. Contact line, single line, not stacked up like a layer cake. On the left starts with the LinkedIn URL. city, state. No, I don't need 123 any street. We don't hire you because of that stuff. Your email and your cell phone number, not your home phone number. I don't care that you can't get your cell phone in your home phone. It's the cell phone number that goes there. And you already understand why. And I didn't share this. I'm sorry. I realized I didn't after I clicked out of it. Let's share that screen one more time. Sorry about that. Well, the other part you'd already seen. Now let's add it. There we go. It's better when you can see it. So give you a second, although you can pause to absorb this. So you understand why we want those two things easiest to get on the LinkedIn. If you're not convinced, click, click, click to get over to my sales brochure. If you are convinced, the easiest thing is pick up the phone, call my cell, and let's get this show on the road and let's make some magic and let me join your team. All the sizing, everything else, it is worth the effort. Change that top to be the positioning title of always your target job. Make sure that your framework, like professional experience or education, those should be 8-point, all cap, bold. But if you leave it black, it draws too much attention. So make it gray so it disappears into the background. Your story has to come. Pay attention to the spacing between everything. How do we do it? Now, this is my version of Word. Your version may look different, but learn this concept, go find it on your version. And so really, it's as simple as to add space after a line. You go up under format down to paragraph. A box pops up that says points after, and right in there, you just type in 8 points after, like after the framework, professional education or professional experience or education, that's 8 points after, or after the employer is 2 points, or after the title is 4 points, or after the bullets is 1.75 points. And suddenly, magically, you get that breathing room. If you need to reduce space or expand around characters, like, oh, it doesn't quite fit to a single line, but it should, you can go up under format down to font. The font thing comes up, you hit advanced, and you realize you can either expand or condense character spacing. By the way, that contact line, 7 point. I can't read that. You can. You can't read it because it's this tight suddenly. Just expand it by 1, 2, 3 points till it moves across the page, and you realize it's totally readable at 7 points, and yet does not pull the focus, because that's not why they're going to hire you. Wherever you are in your process, I want you to think about working through 3, 4, 5, 6 iterations, as many as it takes to get to the right version. Your work pedigree. Let's talk about this for a second as we begin to wrap up for the day. We just have a couple minutes left. You may get that 3 to 5 seconds about your resume, but you may be still missing what we're looking at. We're looking at the quality of those companies. So in the future, really, let's never work again. If we have a choice, never work again for a company we've never heard of. Does nothing to help your brand. Those companies are part of your brand forever. Titles and accomplishments, we're still looking at that, even though I said we wouldn't read the accomplishments. But if you can get them so they're absorbable, I'm definitely going to get something. Of course, educational background. And even in this most simple resume ever, you can understand it's right here. This guy I've got career progression. He's got the degree, 3 amazing brands, probably messed up like every other company, but I didn't work food and beverage, so I don't really know. But compared to 3 food and beverage companies I've never heard of, that person gets hired every time. That was a resume with nothing under the employers and titles. Value everywhere, but nowhere to be seen. So where you're going to lose additional value is what you put under those employers and titles. So negotiate. What is resume worthy? What belongs there? Make sure everything's absorbable, tangible, deliverable. You know, that means we focus in on these things here, things that affect performance. How did you change the organization? What did you contribute? Not simply the duties and responsibilities, which are very, very dull. Degrees of degrees. Have you received in hand your college degree? All we need is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you're 3 credits shy of your degree, you know what that is? No degree. Put your university or college, put coursework toward, just not coursework toward a BS and whatever, because that's too close to the baloney. No fudging at all, no gray area on education. You're not really selling that now. If that was 30 years ago and you didn't quite finish it, you're selling your expertise now. Ignore the degree piece. Just put whatever you have in there and explain your way out of the early decision into the early market, and you gained experience. Designing your resume. This is about moving your brand forward. Not simply a little bit of typesetting, but how do you help them visualize your career path, your deliverables, why you're exciting? let's give you a last word about Word. Go check out my Headless Horseman video on my Self Recruiter YouTube channel. It'll teach you how to never send a Word document, always convert it once you're done with all these precise adjustments over to a PDF, which locks it in state and preserves your value. Very, very, very important. Take the first step and repeat, 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 repeat. Very important. Now we have a number of things coming up this week. If your LinkedIn profile is not effective for you, if it's not singing your praises properly as a full dimensional sales brochure, join in tomorrow at 10 a.m. for your Building Your Career Brand with LinkedIn and learn how to transform what we just saw in the resume much more over to a three-dimensional sales brochure on the LinkedIn side. Job search is a sales process. And when you walk in that door to interview, it's about teaching them how to select you. And that is Thursday's lecture, Interview Intervention. Also, we'll cover video interviewing. Please do like, comment, share, all the fun stuff. I really appreciate it if you got value out of this. And we'll see you guys tomorrow at 10 a.m. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.